Coming up on Merto Center Outlook, from getting Florida's blood centers back on track to a leadership role at one of the largest universities in the country, we'll talk to a man who's devoted much of his life to making our community a better place.
This program is made possible by funding from the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.
Hello everyone. Welcome to UCF Merto Center Outlook. I'm Diane Trees, Director of the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies. We have CEOs, we have politicians, but the real core of our democracy lies with our community leaders, people who volunteer their time and talents to make our lives better. We'll chat with a man who devoted over a quarter century building Darden restaurants and now focuses on philanthropy and investments in the community. But first, let's get a better idea of what volunteering is and what it can mean. Here's Alicia Callanan-Mandigo.
With an atmosphere this festive and sophisticated, it might seem this evening is all about indulgence, but the night is really focused on community service. The Rioja Street Fair Festival, hosted by Scott Joseph, benefited Canine Companions for Independence. It's an organization that depends on all levels of community service, from corporate support to the volunteer trainers that raise the dogs.
Well, I think one of the things that it does is give somebody the fact that they can give back and be independent and now give back to the community, because now they're not dependent on other people. It allows them to get out and do things, whereas they would be at home doing nothing. It opens up a lot of children that have once been very introverted are now extroverted, because now the people don't see the wheelchair, they see the dog.
Service dogs are just one example of how community service and economic development go hand in hand. The chefs here offer another example.
These restaurateurs represent what's being called the new philanthropy, in which their interest in community service becomes part of their business model.
Chef Kevin Fonzo volunteers at the Orlando Junior Academy's Kitchen Lab, teaching kids about cooking, healthy eating, and sustainability. In 2010, Fonzo was invited to the White House for Michelle Obama's Chefs Move to School program.
I initially did it because I believed in it. I enjoyed doing it. The repercussions have been tremendous as far as seeing Michelle Obama in the White House. Just the feedback from the parents about the students, the recognition from the community has been something I never expected before.
Luma's Brandon McGlamory was also recognized in 2010 for his work in promoting sustainable oceans. He was named as a Monterey Bay Aquarium Celebrity Chef Seafood Watch Ambassador.
It was an honor to go to that, and when they called me up and told me, I did some backflips just to be, and then I also said that, and to do this, I have to make sure that if I'm gonna talk the talk, I have to walk the walk. So we definitely at Luma, we really try and make sure that we're always walking the walk.
Community Foundation of Central Florida President Mark Brewer says this kind of thinking is changing things.
Today, young folks are starting businesses where they're making philanthropy a part of their business models. And so what you see as folks engage around a community issue to solve a problem and bring their own personal treasures to the table, I think is an example of what new communities are going to look like going forward.
When you think about it, community service and food make a great pairing because both begin with a passion. Alicia Callanan-Mandigo from Merto Center Outlook.
Next to the term Central Florida Community Leader, you're likely to find the name of Rick Walsh. Rick is president of Nob Hill Group, an investment and publishing firm, but in his spare time, he serves on numerous corporate and volunteer boards. He's also served as chairman of the UCF Board of Trustees and most recently as chairman of Florida's Blood Centers. Rick, thank you for taking the time for the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about why it is so vital and important for a community to have citizens that are engaged in community service.
You know, it's a funny thing. In the United States, we are unique in the world for the role that both the private sector and our faith-based organizations play in the cultural fabric of our country. And so there's always been the folks that participated, whether it was through a community, whether it was through a monastic order, whether it was a business that was built. All of those have always played a significant role. And I think the reason they played a significant role is because if you are building a business, the investment that you make in that business can't be made unilaterally. It has to be made in making sure that the community it serves is healthy as well as the business. And so always making sure that you're part of keeping that community healthy around your business is as important as anything else that we do. So if you think of business strategies, that's got to be a key business strategy.
Well, that's part of your philosophy. And actually, you've done this over the years in different capacities. What brings you the most satisfaction and why you're doing this?
Well, you know, we all live here. This is our home. What we do and how our community works is as important as the fact that it works. And so for me, it's always been making sure that I paid my dues, that I played a role that I could, helped where I could, in the best ways that I could. And for me, it was also about, I love this place. It's been very good to me. I've been here since basically 1968, 69 when I was here at the Naval Hospital. And this community has given me a lot, and I owe it a lot.
You have a real job with Nob Hill, but you also take on leadership roles in the community service that you do, and many of those are real jobs as well. How do you balance the work? Do you work all the time?
You know, I don't work. I tend to be a bit of an overworker than some of my friends, I suppose.
An overworker.
But I get a lot of satisfaction from that. I always try to make sure, however, that it's balanced with my business efforts, with my family efforts, friends efforts, community efforts. I always try to make sure that that's balanced, because if you let it get out of balance, then you're not doing anyone the best that you can. And so this community has been, like I said, very good to me. I've tried to weigh in where I could. I remember a long time ago, in terms of the personal motivation, I guess, 30, 40 years ago now, I remember reading an article that was written by one of the great U.S. Supreme Court Justices, Oliver Wendell Holmes. And Holmes wrote that as life is action and passion, it's required of a man that he be part of the action and passion of his time at the peril of being judged never to have lived. Don't want that to be my epitaph.
Okay. How would you respond to a person who wants to do a few hours, maybe a week or even a month? We're all busy. Our jobs are consuming. How would you encourage them to take a little bit of that time? How would you approach that?
Well, first of all, I'd tell them that they need to build it into their life work so that it's the appropriate percentage of their time in the appropriate place. But the key is the appropriate place. There are millions of things that people can go out and be involved in. There's diseases, there's education, there's sports, there's faith-based organizations. There is no limit to the number of things that someone can choose to be involved with. I think what's important is that the person chooses something that aligns with their personal life. It's something that they are personally passionate about. It's something that's a dire community need that affects everyone, including them and their families, and that it's something that they can really add something to the equation and really make a positive difference. I think that's the important thing that people have to think about when they decide what or how they're going to be involved. I hope it's not if. I think we all have an obligation to do that, but rather that it's not, so that if they're aligned with their personal lives' passions, I think that's a big part of how they ought to look at when they're doing it.
Well, you've taken on some huge roles, and in doing so, how do you focus where you want to share your time and talents? I'm sure you have a waiting list of people that would like you to step in.
Well, I told you earlier, I'm a better background singer than a lead singer. So I like to go do things where I can help fix things quietly behind the scenes. That to me is a role that's important. I conduct my own philanthropy that way, and so it's a little unusual for me to be quite as out there as I have been in recent years. But it's hard to use a filter to decide where and how much time you can send. You got to go back to the balance. You got to go back to the alignment. You got to do those kinds of things as you put your own personal filter in place. But most importantly, don't do it for the plaque. You know, do it because you got something to offer, and do it because what you're going to offer will be part of a team that can help do something better than it's being done now.
Well, let's talk about what led you to take over the role as volunteer chair for the blood centers. That organization has struggled with some difficulties, some ethical issues, an erosion of public trust. You came in April of 2010, volunteer chairman of the board, after the forced resignation of the CEO, and I believe there was an ongoing legislative investigation into blood banking practices in general going on at that time. What prompted you to take on something of that magnitude?
Well, some suggest I lost my mind. I really don't. You know, I had an architecture for my retirement that included certain things. That was not one of them. I had not been affiliated. But I was reading and watching as that story unfolded in our community and around the state. And I remembered my days working as a hospital corpsman in the Navy and how important having access to blood was when we needed it. And it was getting, our blood center was getting beat up pretty hard. Some of it, much of it was warranted. Some of it was not, in fairness. So I've been there about a year, and I will tell you, for me, it wasn't okay that my community was putting itself at risk, unknowingly in some respects, that there wouldn't be blood when somebody needed it. And so I was contacted by several folks in our community. It wasn't a good timing issue for me, but you know, sometimes timing, you don't have a choice of times. But I just felt that it was so important to our community. I tried to imagine, after I talked to a group of some of the folks that had been on the board that had contacted me, and after I left our little gathering that day, and I was trying to decide whether I was going to do it or not, I was driving home on I-4, I saw a big accident. And I got to thinking, well, what if that was someone in my family? Or what if that was you know, one of my friends or some of my colleagues? And they needed blood, and it wasn't there. And that just wasn't okay for my community.
Now, you say about being sort of behind the scenes. You've been very much more visible with this role. You've had to be. How did you go about changing the dynamics there?
Well, first of all, I think people need to know that this was a very, from a technical and scientific aspect, this was a very, very well-run organization. It had the FDA's sort of highest marks in terms of how it conducted its business and safety and all the things that you think about when you're dealing with blood and blood products. And so that part of it was pretty intact. We have an interim CEO there, a guy by the name of Mike Pratt, who just does a great job. He's a terrific scientist, retired Navy captain, blood guy that just has forgotten more about blood than anybody I know knows or will ever know. But when we got there, it was hemorrhaging a little bit. Donations were way down. It was operating at a deficit. And I felt immediately, just spending the first couple weeks I was there trying to understand it, that a couple things had to happen quickly. And first was that we needed to get it financially healthy. The second was we had to make sure that we did not in any way, shape, or form underinvest or focus on the safety piece of it, but that we had an obligation, in my opinion, to recognize that it was a community asset and that we needed to make sure that it was being run well and acting as a community asset. So we moved quickly, and we put a new leadership team in place. It had a great board, what was left of it, and we brought some new talent to that board. And in a single year, we have completely turned that around.
You've done an amazing job.
Thank you. Donors are up. We are financially healthy. And I think we're earning it back one at a time. And I think you'll be pleased to know that we're looking at some merger opportunities that will further stabilize the blood supply in our community and make sure that it's always available, it's always safe, and it's always affordable.
Well, that is coming, the mergers possibly with two other blood banks in the state. Why consider a merger now when you're really getting the blood centers back on track?
That's a fair question, Diane. I think that one of the things we have to recognize is that in a room of 100 people, 60 people on any given day are not eligible to give blood either permanently or temporarily. They're taking some medications, they've been traveling in a country somewhere. Of the remaining 40, only 3 give. And so what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're trying to add number 4, 5, and 6 so that the blood is always there. And so for us, going there and making sure that we were focusing on that was really, really important. Getting it financially healthy was going to happen whether there was a merger or not, and we have done that. We've been able to not only take it out of the deficit, but to end the year with a surplus, and a significant surplus, and that surplus has already gone back to the hospital partners and to the patients that need it in the form of 2 price reductions. And imagine in today's world, taking significant price reductions. We've had 2. We're anticipating a 3rd one, and hopefully not having to raise prices for a long time. That's what a community asset does.
I wondered, with the 2 blood banks in different locations in the state, what would the geographic impact possibly be on the distribution of the blood and potentially economically?
Hopefully it would help further stabilize, and that's part of what you do when scale brings you the opportunity to help stabilize, because your resources are more measured. And so hopefully that will happen. That's our intention. And clearly, from meeting as I have with my counterparts in those other parts of the state, they are committed to that. They're as committed as we are to running a healthy, safe, available, and affordable blood supply organization. And so I think that what you'll see is, if we're successful, that you're going to see a really strengthened, for the long haul, organization that will always make sure our community has safe blood.
We've been talking about community service more in terms of an individual perspective. Let's talk about a corporate perspective, corporate citizenship. You were with Darden for over 20 years as a senior VP. During that time period, you headed up a number of community initiatives. How did you raise millions of dollars and mobilize your workforce? Can you talk about a couple of those projects and how you did that?
Well, we have the leadership team at Darden Restaurants, and literally beginning with Bill Darden, and then followed by Joe Lee, now Clarence. That has been a total commitment to making sure that we're always investing in our communities. We talked about the personal alignment. One of the things that's always surprised me is that a lot of organizations that go try to get companies to, help them or participate, don't do their homework. They don't go back. I always tell folks, go read, if they're a public company like Darden, go read the last 3 years of the chairman's letter to shareholders. That will tell you what the strategies and what they're thinking about, so that when you go talk to them and you're asking them to help you do things, you're doing it in a way that aligns with the goals, because that's why a business, a private sector business like that in particular, would invest in a community, because those goals are aligned and they can have a mutual benefit to do that. Whether it's developing their employees, whether it's, solving a major community problem that affects a lot of the employees that work in the area, whatever it is, somehow align it with the goals of the business, and I think that you would find more businesses engaging using that formula.
How did you get the employees? Was that a difficult thing to do?
No, as I said earlier, the part of community participation is unique to our country. It's ingrained in the culture. Everybody wants to help. You see it happening during disasters, whether it was 9/11 or Katrina or others, so many others, the flooding in the Midwest. People want to help, but you got to help them find a way to help that they can do. You wouldn't ask someone that is just come out of college or just come out of high school and are working a job to try to give $10,000. That's not what they're able to do. But they can go down and help somebody on a Saturday morning or a Thursday night or something, and that is as important as writing a check or making that. So you just got to find the avenues that those employees want to be involved in anyway, and then support them. And what you get back, by the way, there's a return on this. Is you get employees who are very loyal to your business because you're supporting them. You get employees that are learning how to socially interact. They're learning new leadership skills by working with people that they can't mandate. things. They've got to just persuade and to work with and be part of a team. So you get better employees and you get them that want to stay longer.
So those are the benefits that come back to the corporation with lending their people, administrators and employees on business working hours. There is a return back.
Yes, absolutely.
Community-wise, what are the economic benefits perhaps and when a corporation backs a community issue?
Well, I think we all have a responsibility to try to leave the community better than we found it. And so there's a civic rent that occurs, in my view, that again has to be built into any successful business plan. I think if you look around at all the companies in the country, and there's a Fortune 1000, of course, which are the really big ones, but there's 17 million additional companies out there in addition to those 1,000. And everybody has something that they can do. And if you look at how they're aligning themselves and what they're doing in those communities, if everybody just did one thing, imagine what our communities would be like.
Especially, I think, of importance now that we've had to streamline. Government has cut so many services and our nonprofits are hurting, that stepping in is a big benefit as well.
They are, but I would argue that if you're doing it right, they would have been there from the beginning. That they're not stepping in to save anything, that they've always been part of it and parting to help build and grow the priorities of a community.
And that's what you said about being the goals of the organization.
Yes.
Let's talk about another key role that you've played, and that's as chairman of the Board of Trustees for the University of Central Florida. You took on that commitment of time, responsibility, and you did it while you were doing the volunteer chair role for the blood centers. What prompted you to take on that role as well?
There's a lot of things you can control in your life. Timing is not one of them sometimes. It can surprise you. UCF has been a labor of love for me. I was a student here in 1973. I graduated with my bachelor's degree and master's degree from here. I've always been involved with the university. It's a very special place. It's become the crown jewel of the economic engine of our community. But what it has done better than anything is it's provided access to people like me who didn't have a lot of money that could afford to go here. So the fact that we've been able to maintain that accessibility to our campuses, to me, has been a priority. It's one of the reasons I became involved in the Board of Trustees. I served as chair for 4 years. For me, it was really important that be a primary goal of this university, in addition to the excellence, of course, and quality. And boy, hasn't UCF surprised all of us.
And you presided over a period in time of incredible growth and changes. Yes. With what?
We had a great team. The founding Board of Trustees and the subsequent trustees that have been added to the board over the last 11 years have been extraordinarily talented, dedicated people, some alums and some not, who just wanted to be part of this very exciting venue out here. And think of what the impact that it's had on our community. Lay aside even the accessibility and the several 100,000 students that live in the area. Think about a medical city and the research park and the direct connects with our community colleges. And it's just, it has had a leadership team here that has performed and done extraordinary things. And so it was fairly easy to be on the board during that time.
Relative term.
If you discount the $100 million in cuts the last 3 years, which we've had to navigate,
yes.
It's been relatively easy, because very talented team out here, very dedicated, and it was a privilege to be part of it.
And again, it sounds as if it was another way for you to build the community. One last question for you. What's the motto by which you live?
Well, other than my Oliver Wendell Holmes motto, I have one that I remind myself every day. I actually have it posted on my computer screen. And it basically says, do more, talk less, do more, listen more, talk less, do more, leave it better than you found it, and enter your house justified.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks
for
for
being
having me.
here. And thank you for what you do to the community, and also especially for all that you've done for UCF. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been talking with Rick Walsh, president of Nob Hill Group and a role model for community involvement. We'd like to know what you think about community service in Central Florida. Share your views on our website. I'm Diane Trees. Thank you for joining me on UCF Metro Center Outlook.
This program was made possible by funding from the Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.